Good evening. Well, what can I say about tonight's guest? This guy started working life as a furniture upholsterer, and he ended up towards the end of his football career as part of the furniture just down the road from here at Bramall Lane, part of the rich fabric of Sheffield United and their history, despite only spending 3 years at the club. Now, during that time, he wove his name into some famous history. A couple of promotions in that time, and he played in the Premier League, despite, by his own admission, not being the greatest player in the world, but certainly one of the great characters and one of the best blokes. I welcome Bob Booker to the studio. Evening, Bob.
Evening. Nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me up here. Talking about the upholstery, just
yes.
having a little look.
I wondered.
The best thing about this is that it's red.
I thought
That's
you
all I
might
can
say
say
that.
at the moment. So yeah, no.
Okay, it doesn't need re-upholstering
It's
then.
fine at the moment, mate.
Okay,
Depends
right.
who you have sitting on it.
Well, we often have people of the blues persuasion sitting over there.
Exactly.
Wednesday nights, there's going to be a club legend of yours coming on this show in 2 or 3 weeks' time. I won't say any more than that. I have to say that's part of the party political.
No
You
problem,
understand
mate.
that?
I can deal with that.
You've driven up from Bolton, but we are
Bolton?
honoured.
Brighton?
Brighton. Yes,
If I was in Bolton, I'd have drove down, Alan.
You would.
How's
you
your
would.
geography? All right.
It's not so good. I mean, I've only been to one match at Brighton in my career, and that was at the Withdean Stadium many, many years ago.
Sure,
But
yeah.
I've been to many at Bolton. Your geography ought to be better than mine anyway, as you're currently a driving instructor.
Absolutely, yes. I know your daughter's just recently passed, so there's no work for me there. But yeah, for my troubles on today on a day-to-day basis, I'm a driving instructor, which I thoroughly enjoy. It's a form of coaching, albeit on a one-to-one basis, which I love. You know, you're in charge of your own business when you work, when you don't work. I still work down at Brighton on a match day because I was assistant manager down there for 11 years. Yeah. So lucky enough to get invited back and do match day stuff now, hospitality, a tour of the dressing rooms and a bit of commentary work, a bit of media work. So, you know, it's just a nice balance in my life at the moment. So, yeah, I'm really pleased with the way it's all going.
Fantastic. Honoured for the 400-mile round trip. We hope to make it well worth. You see, I do know a bit about geography, really, because I know about expenses. You see, when I go to these places.
I'm still waiting for mine, by the way.
Yeah, 400 miles minimum for an expenses claim. I think you might get away with 5. One of the reasons Bob's here, not the only reason, but one of the reasons is this book. Now, if you haven't got hold of it, you really do need to. There we are. Who are the Bob Booker story, the famous chant that accompanied your exploits with Sheffield United, those 2 promotions. There it is. There it is. Okay, you realise that's him.
Yep.
And that's a picture that made you proud. We're going to talk about the current team because you know 1 or 2 of the personalities involved in that very shortly. But just before we do, that picture was your favourite one because it says everything in your face. You just arrived in the Premier League after a long, long journey, and members of your family were there, not least your father.
Yeah, I mean, that is dedicated to my father, and so is the book, really. That was the first game, once we got into the old First Division, which was now the Premiership, against Liverpool. There was a little bit of a break in play, and I remember where he was sitting, and we were just waiting for something. I turned and looked at him, and you could see him smiling, and it just sort of said it all, really. You know, this is where I wanted to get, Dad. So that is why I chose that picture, because it meant such a lot to me to be at that stage of my career, late in my career, playing against Liverpool at Bramall Lane in the First Division. To me, it didn't get any better than that.
No, but it could get as good as that again. And I know you keep in touch with your former clubs. For those who don't know, of course, Bob was a Brentford legend as well before coming to Sheffield United. Subsequently, he was assistant manager and caretaker manager for a spell as well at Brighton and Hove Albion. But you're obviously as delighted as everybody is around here with what's going on now and the way the team are threatening to emulate what you did back in the day with Dave Bassett.
Well, I think over the last few years, it's probably the closest that it's on its way to being that. You know, let's not get too excited. It's early in the season, but you know, Chris has set his stall out, and particularly pleased for him having been an ex-teammate of mine and used to live with him up at Sheffield, doing a great job. And just looking at that team there, and what reminds me so much about that and our squad, really, there's no real what I call big-time Charlies. There's no real big names there. You know, it's full of free transfers, players that are still hungry for the game. That's what I find interesting. So he's particularly done that in his work, Chris. And to be doing what he's doing at the Championship, he's earned the right to be there with the Halifaxes and the Northamptons. You know, that's where, yeah, come on, let this young manager have a go.
Yeah.
You know, and hopefully if it leads to bigger things in the Premiership, why couldn't he have a go at the Premiership? Or why can't he get Sheffield United to the Premiership? So he's doing a fantastic job. But that team that he's got at the moment, I came up to the first game. I can't remember who it was against now. You might
This
know that.
season, home game.
Home game.
I think it was a draw, wasn't it? Was it
No,
the first home game?
they just won 1-0. Billy Sharp got a late winner, didn't he?
Yeah.
Anyway, I particularly went into the office afterwards to meet
I was
Chris.
thinking last season. Yeah, Billy Sharp.
And I just said, can't believe that work rate, the way that the team was closing down as a unit. How are you going to keep that up like for 40-odd games? And he said, well, we're going to try. And if he can emulate that sort of through the season, which I think he's doing at the moment, he's, you know, and you've got that tight unit and that group of players working like we did, you're on to a winner.
Yeah.
You know, it's not so much about the coaching, you just get them out there. You know, the banter must be great, the team spirit must be really strong, they look a strong unit. And if you take that over that white line and you've got players doing their jobs week in and week out without really changing the plan, except for Brooks, I mean, you're giving the ball, anything could happen.
Yeah. But
the rest of them, they all do their jobs in their prospective roles and get the job done. No one really changes the plan and complicates it, and that's the recipe for success.
You played with a lot of characters, and that Dave Bassett team was big on big characters. Do you see something similar now in the leadership within the team? I wrote a column today about the number of leaders, and funnily enough, we had a conversation before we came on air, and you said that was a point that you wanted to raise as well.
It's interesting because I was, doing, I don't see a lot of games, but I keep a little eye on the squad and who's coming in. And Chris has rung me up sometimes and asked me about a few players or get some contact for some players. I'm not saying who. That's all confidential.
I'll find out after the show. Buy him a pint. But might take 3 or 4.
Looking at that squad there, or that predominantly first team, about 6 or 7 of them have already been captains in their own right, even at a young age at other clubs. So they got that leadership quality. You know, normally you might just have 1 or 2 leaders in a team. As you say, in our time, we had a few. You know, we had Big Stan, Vinny when he came. You know, I wasn't really that sort of character, but I could get the crowd going. Glenn Hodges, players that stood out. And Chris has got that little group of captains now within the team. So that can only be really positive, especially if a lot of the players are still quite young. You know, they need nurturing. So he's getting a nice mix. It's all about getting that team into a shape and doing what you want them to do with a group of players. You know, you can have as many best players in the world, but if you can't put them together in a shape and get them to do certain things what you want, then you're on a hide into nothing. So he's got a work ethic there first and foremost, and then he's got his structure and his teamwork and his set plays, and everybody's just on board at the moment. So long may it continue.
A rare quality, I think, to have so many leaders in one club now, because everybody who used to play in your era tells me there aren't enough leaders in the game now on the field, and it applies right across the board. And I certainly see evidence of that as well. So to have so many at one team speaks of perhaps, a lot of foresight and planning by the management team and the fellow who goes out talent spotting as well, Paul Mitchell, to get the right characters in.
Well, it is about your backroom staff. It's the same as any job, Alan. You're only as good as your staff. And Chris has also put a very good, a staff network together on his scouting, his backroom staff, his medical staff. And let's not forget the assistant manager. The role that I played, very, very, very little in the limelight. And in his own admission, I wouldn't imagine, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that Chris and Alan probably don't mix that much socially, which isn't a problem.
The only reason for that is Alan can't keep up with his drinking.
Absolutely, yeah, don't blame him.
He says he daren't go out with a manager. They're different types.
But as long as they got that good working relationship, where they obviously have, and for 90 minutes on a day-to-day basis at the training ground, that's what counts. I worked under sort of 7, 8 managers. I didn't go out drinking with them all, I didn't socialise with them all. Some of them I did, some of them I didn't, but I still had a great working relationship with them. It's getting that balance, and if you get that, being an assistant manager, I almost call it like, don't take this the wrong way, it's like being married to a man, if you know what I mean. I don't mean in that sense,
no,
but you've got to, if he turns around and says, what we're doing today, you've got to have an answer. When we're leaving, where are we picking the players up, what hotel are we in, what session we're doing today, you've got to have the answer. So if you can take all that off the manager and leave him to pick the team and do his final thing, that's the beauty of an assistant manager, and Alan's probably obviously very good at that.
Well, plus Alan's been a manager himself,
Yeah.
Bury and
So he knows,
Scunthorpe,
yeah.
and Rotherham. So
he knows what's required.
Yeah, absolutely, and
Yeah.
they seem to gel. Did you see a manager in your teammate of all those years ago? You know, going back to the late '80s, early '90s, in Chris Wilder.
Well, I used to see him manage the Bradway on a Sunday morning, but that was after a skinful on a Saturday night, the pair of us. But that was quite strange because, you know, I'd just come to United and Chris really sort of took me under his wing, really, even though he was younger. You know, I ended up living at his house with his family, and he looked after me big time. You know, he's the first one that took me to the training ground on my first day, which was quite daunting. Even though I'd been sort of a quite seasonal professional, I still was a small fish in a big pond as far from Brentford to Sheffield United. And there's no disrespect to Brentford, it was a massive jump. So he was there for me. And he used to take me off on a Sunday morning because he used to go down and manage the Bradway, and I'd be standing on the touchline and his mates would be looking, well, I watched him play yesterday, and
what's he doing here?
And then we're going for a pint down the pub with the boys, and I can imagine, and I'm sure he does. I should imagine Chris still does that with him lads because he's grounded. He's you know, he's not up there just because he's a manager. He's, you know, I heard the other day he got on a bus and went somewhere from the lane because he had to get somewhere. How cool's that?
He's a proper person.
Proper person. A working class manager.
I went to a non-league game on Tuesday night, and people were saying, "Oh, where is Chris here tonight?" You know, because he often goes down to watch Hallam or Sheffield FC.
Yeah.
Just remains rooted.
Absolutely. And you might pick up a bargain down there.
Well, absolutely, and I think the fellow who's got actually out there vetting and watching players is second to none, Paul Mitchell, and the way that he's regarded. The one thing he hasn't had is a break, so he's done all the right things in terms of all the apprenticeship, all the way up. And I think English managers now have almost got to transport themselves into the Premier League by going up with a club. And he's done all that, but in 16 years never had the sack, so he's never had a break.
Interesting point, isn't it? You know, so
never had a break.
Has always been sort of offered another job, the next step up. So that's a real testament to him as well, like the credit that he's got as a coach and a manager. And a lot of it, let's be fair, his man management is fantastic because the players can probably relate to him as the lad that goes down the pub, but he's the gaffer in the dressing room, and that's priceless.
I think he can. I think he shares a quality of somebody that you know better than me because you work for him, but I've known for a long time as well. And that was Dave Bassett, who always talked about. In fact, Jeff Taylor always said, "I wonder what head Harry's got on," because he could put a different head on for a different situation.
Yeah.
And I think Chris has got a similar quality to that. Do you
Absolutely.
not think?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, Dave Bassett. He's, you know, Jeff. Jeff as the assistant was, like we just said, that working relationship.
They were different.
Yeah, very
Massively
different. But Jeff was massive for Harry because he did most of, a lot of the coaching, and we'd be up there in the morning with Jeff doing the sessions, and Harry would come up and just sort of come in and do his little bit. But Harry's man management for me was second to none. I think we got beat at home once. The crowd were booing. I was probably getting slaughtered again as I did early on. I think we got beat 1-0 at home. Crowd not happy when we were expecting to go up further up the league. And I planned to go home. I'd been home for about 6 weeks. So I'm thinking, we're coming off the pitch. You know, we've got an absolute roasting from Harry. You know, you're crap. You didn't do this today. You didn't win your headers, Bob. You didn't win your tackles. You let the fans down today. You're in the morning. You're running around the track because you didn't run today for 70 minutes. And I'm thinking, I've got to tell the family I'm not coming home. I haven't been home for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So got to make the call. So I go into the showers, and Harry comes through the shower after calming down a little bit. And in that moment, he must have remembered that I'd asked to go home.
Yeah.
So he come up in the shower and said, "Get yourself off home, son. You ain't been home for 6 weeks."
That's close.
And I went, "Harry, if the lads are in running, then I'll be in." And I didn't go home. But the fact that he said that
meant everything.
Spoke volumes to me. So I went and got a DVD. I went and got Kes, 4 cans of John Smith's, Kentucky Fried Chicken. Went back to my digs, and I ran in the morning. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
For about an hour. Round the site.
But nevertheless, that recognition and that gesture.
I would have run through a brick wall for that man, because of the way he used to man manage me, or the team.
And you think the same applies to the players under this manager?
I think it's very, very close.
Yeah. Okay. So Tony Curry sat where you are. Yeah. Right.
Now that's a legend.
Now there we are, and that was just two or three games into the season, and he gobsmacked me because I just said, "Tony, where do you see the season pan? How do you see it panning out? Where do you think they might finish?" And he just said, "Runners up." And there was a pause, and I said, "Pardon?" He said, "Runners up." So I said, "What, you mean second?" So yeah. And had it been anybody but Tony, I think there'd have been some derision and mockery out there, even among the most ardent Blades fans, because it was him. People stopped and well, it may not be so far-fetched. What do you think, honestly? What do you honestly think? It's a big ask.
It's a big ask. You know, it's still such a long way to go. You know, at the moment the train's run along nicely. Everyone's on board, but there's going to be some sticky moments. You know, there's going to be suspension. There's going to be some injuries. Having said that, there's a lot of good backup there, and you know, in positional-wise, he's more or less like doubled up on every position with the squad. But there will come some bad times, and that's when you want the fans to stick with it, which I'm sure they will. The players have got to stick at it, the staff have got to stick at it, because it's not all going to be roses. It never will be for the whole season. If it does, fantastic, then you take it and grab it. But when it's going to get sticky, that's when Chris will really earn his stripes with the squad. Do they still believe in him? If they have a couple of bad results, do the fans still believe in him? So
well, that's where the fans can earn their stripes.
Absolutely, and that's
when that
yeah.
happens, as it will do. The other thing is the crucial thing. If still in contention in January, that is a huge month, and you wonder to what extent the Blades board can and will back him. There might be a few pleasant surprises there, but also the tricky balancing act of retaining that wonderful togetherness and spirit. And not weakening it by bringing X and Y in at higher wages and fees. Tricky,
because the players will all get a sniff of that. You know, Chris is bringing players in, but like I said, there's no real big names there that he's bringing, is there? No. So there's no one to really sort of rock the boat. You know, when Vinny came to us, I knew Vinny anyway because I grew up with him. So you know, Vinny was Vinny to me. But you know, when he came to us for 750,000, when we probably didn't have nothing, you know, that was massive. And that came with big things on his shoulders, Vinny. So, and everybody, Vinny Jones, you know. And so, you got to be careful who you're integrating into the squad, and that's got to be done on a nice basis, so you keep the thing flowing, and the players don't get upset, and you don't get them little clicks and the little splits, because it happens. You know, you've got a group of players, and all them players probably don't all get on socially. A lot of them might be big mates. But they've got to get on together while they're on the training pitch within the week. Yeah. So you want that nice balance.
But ideally, I suppose, if you're bringing people in at higher wages, which it has to be if you're going to improve the quality, then it have to be players that, you know, that the existing players respect enough to accept that, well, they're on more than me.
Yeah. And he's producing more than me.
Yes.
And you got no qualms in.
No.
But someone comes in and think, he's just there for the payoff or whatever. Yeah. Why is he taking my place? He's no better than me. That's when it gets
so tricky.
Yeah, and that's what you have to manage.
Okay, I mean, we'll talk far more in part 2 about the book, the contents of the book.
Hope so.
And Bob
that's what I've given 4 hours for.
Absolutely. You struck a blow, let me say, without disrespecting you, in the last couple of minutes of part 1, for the less gifted footballer, shall we say, that you came late to the professional game, and you made sacrifices for that.
Yeah, you did. I mean, coming from sort of just Saturday football really into the pro game, I was quite not well known in my area, but I was well known by people and friends, you know, at the local football circle. But once I signed pro, you had to make some sacrifices not to go out after Wednesday. I got a game on a Saturday. You know, I was quite disciplined with that. And having done an apprenticeship in a factory, I knew how to be disciplined, because I had to look after 7 blokes. Did they have the right equipment? You know, get their teas, make their tea, wash the floor, you know, do all this sort of stuff. So that was my grounding really, as to be disciplined and organised and passionate about what I did. So I think that stood me in good stead when I signed pro. But I've still got 2 mates now, you know, a lad called Tony Bates and Derek Holt, who are my best friends since school. And when we get together, we very rarely talk about football. Because they've stuck there with me, you know. They knew that I couldn't go out, but where the others, there's a bit of jealousy about it. Oh, he's gone and signed for Brentford. You know, he don't come up here and you don't come down the pub anymore. Yeah. Well, no, because even in them days, I didn't feel like I could do that. Yeah. To produce on the football pitch. Yeah. So, yeah, you do make sacrifices, and it's. But having said that, you know, especially today, you get well paid for it. So what? You got to travel the country a few times. You stay in lovely hotels. You're looked after. You're fed. You're watered. Your disciplines, your medication, everything's done for you. It's not that bad, is it?
Not a bad life, and it's
If you can get it.
It's a fantastic life to be sitting here talking to you, I have to say. And
Well,
as ever with this programme, it doesn't feel like work. In fact, it's not work, it's more of a hobby.
Yeah.
That's part one, it's gone. Join us in 5 minutes. James Gregg will be here, so will Bob. See you then. See ya.